Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vajjana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vajjana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vajjana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vajjana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Thank you. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Hari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories Shri Prabhupada. Nārāyaṇa-smṛtiḥ. Naram chaiva narottamam. Devim saraswatim vyasam. Tato jaya murdiyat. Nasta prayud badreshu. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavat Uttama Shloke. Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This morning we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 2, Text 13. Hatainam Mapanayita Krita Sheshaga Nishkritam Yad Asau Bhagavan Nama Mriyamana Samagrahit Hataina Mapanayata Krita Sheshaga Nishkritam Yadasau Bhagavan Nama Mriyamana Samagrahit Hataina Mapanayata Krita Sheshaga Nishkritam Yadasau Bhagavan Nama Mriyamana Samagrahit Hataina Mapanayata Krita Sheshaga Nishkritam Yadasau Bhagavan Nama Nirmiyamana Samagrahit Tainama Mapanayata Krita Sheshaga Nishkritam Yadasau Bhagavan Nama Mriyamana Samagrahit Tainama Mayapata Krita Sheshaga Nishkritam Yadasau Bhagavan Nama Mriyamana Samagrahit Tainama Mapanayata Tainama Mapanayata Krita Sheshaga Nishkritam Yadasau Bhagavan Nama Mriyamana Samagrahit. Jordan, would you like to try? Hataina Mapanayata Krita Sheshaga Nishkritam Yadasau Bhagavan Nama Mriyamana Samagrahit. Mataji. Hataina Mapanayata Krita Sheshaga Nishkritam Yadasau Bhagavan Nama Mriyamana Samagrahit. Synonyms. Ata, therefore. Ainam, him. Ajamil. Ma, do not. Apanayata, try to take. Krita, already done. Ashesha, unlimited. Aganishkritam, atonement for his sinful actions. Yat, because. Asau, he. Bhagavat Nama, the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mriyamana, while dying. Samagrahit, perfectly chanted. Translation. At the time of death, this Ajamila helplessly and very loudly chanted the holy name of the Lord, Narayana. That chanting alone has already freed him from the reactions of all sinful life. Therefore, O servants of Yamaraj, do not try to take him to your master for punishment in hellish conditions. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Vishnudutas, who are superior authorities, gave orders to the Yamadutas, who did not know that Ajamila was no longer subject to tribulation in hellish life for his past sins. Although he had chanted the holy name Narayana to indicate his son, the holy name is so transcendently powerful that he was automatically freed because he had chanted the holy name while dying. Ante nārāyaṇa-smṛtiḥ. As Krishna confirms in Bhagavad Gita 7.28, Yesham tvanta gatam papam jnanam punya karmanam te dvandva maho moha nirmukta bhajanti mam drishtavrtaha. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, whose sinful actions are completely eradicated and who are freed from the duality of delusion, engage themselves in my service with determination. Unless one is freed from all sinful reactions, one cannot be promoted to the platform of devotional service. Elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita, 8.5 is stated, Antakale chamam eva smaran mukta kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yati nashyatra samshaha. If one remembers Krishna, Narayana, at the time of death, one is certainly eligible to return immediately home, back to Godhead. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaisnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Ando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hare Pri Vancha Kalpataribhyascha Kripa Sundibhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnabhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. At the time of death, this Ajamila helplessly and very loudly chanted the holy name of the Lord, Narayana. That chanting alone has already freed him from the reactions of all sinful life. Therefore, O servants of Yamaraj, do not try to take him to your master for punishment in hellish conditions. Hare Krishna. So now we're hearing the importance or the nectar of chanting the holy names. When I go on book distribution, I show them the Bhagavad Gita. And I say, you know what's strange about this book? They say, what? I tell them, it gets sweeter and sweeter every time you read it. So they say, really? And I said, yes. And I tell them that these sets of books, they do three things. I tell them it helps you to have a peaceful mind, a peaceful heart, and it creates good, I don't want to say auspicious, but good fortune in your life. So I tell them to be free from anger, greed, lust, pollution in the heart. Wouldn't it be nice? Yeah. So everyone wants good qualities. And so I'll be discussing two main topics: sons, or having sons, and crying out for Krishna. So a son is called Put, and a son who can deliver his father from the hellish conditions of life is called a Putra. So we should aim for that. Not just, a worthless son, Therefore, that famous instruction, one should not be a father, a mother, a demigod, a spiritual master, if he cannot deliver his dependents from the cycle of birth and death. But in Kali Yuga, there's so many unqualified parents out there. They don't know what to do. They don't know anything about karma, reincarnation, Krishna. So a lot of people are actually disqualified to become fathers and mothers. And I think most of you know that I have a twin brother. His name is Dennis. And so one day I was I went to visit my parents, and I was in the backyard with my father. So I asked him this question: what was it like to raise twins on your own? Because my mom, she had come here to the States to collect money for us to come here. So he said something interesting. He said, when one sleeps, the other one would wake up and cry. So we didn't give my dad any peace at all. And he says that it takes an entire village to raise a child. So being a responsible, dutiful parent is not so easy. One has to earn a living and provide for his family. He has to make sacrifices. Everyone has to make sacrifices. So Srila Prabhupada, he says that men and women in this Kali Yuga, they want to enjoy. And what happens? They don't want to get married, so the woman becomes pregnant. The father leaves the mother all alone to raise a child. So then she has to beg from the government for protection. So Srila Prabhupada, he says, is this a sign of an advanced civilization? Is this a sign of a healthy society? No. But that's Kali Yuga. And so we can never repay the debts to our parents. Therefore, we should try to do some service for them by becoming Krishna consciousness. So when I heard Srila Prabhupada explain this, I was very curious. He says that Chanakya Pandit, he says there's 4 enemies in a family. You guys remember what they are? Morgan? A father who is a debtor, he's considered an enemy in the family. A mother who marries a second time, she's considered an enemy in the family. A beautiful wife is considered a beautiful family. A beautiful wife is considered an enemy of the family. And lastly, a foolish son. So Srila Prabhupada explains that in India, it's the Manu Samhita, that when the father dies a debtor, the father also inherits that debt. So a father that leaves debt to his son, he is considered an enemy. And a mother who marries a second time in the presence of her grown-up children is considered an enemy. And a beautiful wife is considered an enemy. Srila Prabhupada, he was talking to his disciples, and he said, you all have beautiful wives. So then he said this. He said, that's going to be very difficult for you. So everyone's looking for a beautiful wife, but why is a wife considered an enemy, a beautiful wife? She distracts other men. Not only that, but if she's not chaste, she becomes an enemy. And a foolish son. There's a saying that a blind uncle is better than no uncle. So similarly, people think, I may have a bad son, but it's better than no son. So speaking of families, I was distributing books in La Jolla, in Balboa Park. And people from different places go there, Europe, Asia, other parts of the States. And so there's families, there's couples, there's singles. And I'm starting to witness something very strange. They hire a photographer to take pictures of their family. So the last time I was there was a family. The man was embracing the woman, they were smiling. So the photographer was directing them, put your hand up like this. And as soon as the photographer finished, you could see the face on the man. He went from smiling to frown, even to angry or even agitated. So, and in these pictures, they want to look lovey-dovey, send postcards to their family. I'm successful, right? I'm married, I'm going to have children. But that's not the definition of success. Why? Because there is no practice of Krishna consciousness in the family. It's all just lust and sense gratification, that's all. So a weak foundation will ultimately result in collapse in the structure. Similarly, a society with no strong spiritual foundation is doomed to fail in morality, culture, behavior, and in values. Nate vidu swarta gatim hi Vishnum. The living entities have forgotten the aim of life, which is to go back home, back to Godhead. So that's what we call so-called family in Kali Yuga. So Srila Vyasadeva in the Mahabharata, he had 3 sons. One was Pandu, the other one was Dhritarashtra and Vidura. So the first woman was called Ambika. She gave birth to a blind child whose name was Dhritarashtra, because Satyavati, her two sons had died prematurely. So there was no one to trust the kingdom to. So she asked her son Vyasadeva to procreate. So the first lady was named as Ambika. And when she saw Vyasadeva, he was just coming back from severe austerity. It was described that his teeth was almost as black as his complexion. He had matted hair, he had really strong odor. He was unshaved, unclean, you know. He just had a loincloth. So when she found out that she had to unite with Vyasadeva, she closed her eyes. And then in that time, she gave birth to Dhritarashtra. Therefore, he was born blind. And then the second lady, her name was Ambalika. And so this sister, when she saw Vyasadeva, she turned pale. So Pandu came out pale, but he was effulgent. He had marks on his body to be a virtuous and pious king. And so he was going to try a second time with the sister. But then she tricked Vyasadeva, and she told a maidservant to go to the room with Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva, he knew what was going on, but he still begot children. And this child, because this maidservant was very respectful to Vyasadeva, Vyasadeva blessed her and said, "You will no longer be a maidservant. Your son will be a glorious child." And Vidura came out. And so the maidservant gave birth to a child named Vidura, and he became the chief minister and advisor of the Kuru house. So he was raised alongside with his two brothers, and the three boys, they grew up like resplendent gods. And Dhritarashtra, he was disqualified because he was blind to inherit the throne. So on behalf of Pandu, he took the throne. But what was strange is that Pandu, he went to the forest. And before this, Bhishmadev, he wanted to marry the boys. So Dhritarashtra married, who did he marry? Gandhari. And Gandhari, she blindfolded herself because she didn't want to be any way superior to her husband. So the whole time she blindfolded herself. And then Pandu married Kunti, Queen Kunti, and Madri. And so Madri, Kunti, and King Pandu, they went to the forest. They went to sport there and to enjoy. And as kings, they're required to hunt, for their weapons, to keep their skills intact like that. So one day he saw two deers mating, and he shot the deer. And then, to his surprise, the deer started speaking to him. He said, "My dear king, you're supposed to be glorious. You're supposed to be. You should know virtue, but you shot me while I was mating." So he was actually a sage, and he turned himself into a deer with his wife, so that they can mate outside. Because if they were in human bodies, they wouldn't look so nice in the eyes of the public. So he said, "Just like I died while I was enjoying, you are also going to die when you enjoy with your wife." So Pandu heard this curse, and he was very thoughtful. He started thinking about this curse. So he said, "I'm going to practice austerity." So he tried sending Kunti and Madri back to the kingdom, but they were chaste to him. They said, "No, we want to perform austerities with you, king." So he allowed them. And then, after a few years, Madri, she was bathing, there's like a river fall. And Pandu, it said it was like 7 years. And he saw the shape of her body, So then the lusty desires came out. And he started embracing Madri, and Madri tried to protest, tried to refuse his advancement towards her, but he took her by his arms. They fell down, and then at that time he felt like he had a heart attack, had a deep pain in his chest, so he died like that. And then Madri, she started calling out for Kunti. So she explained to him what had happened. So anyway, so as you guys know, Dhritarashtra took the throne. He became king. And when Gandhari, when she found out that Kunti actually had 2 sons before her, she was very angry. And she was blessed by Vyasadeva to have 101 children. One was a daughter. And so she waited 2 years, but nothing came out. So she became very angry, and she struck her womb. Then a large lump of flesh came out of her. And then Vyasadeva appeared and said, "What did you do?" And she said, "Out of anger, I struck my womb, and this lump of flesh came." So Vyasadeva told him to get 101 pots and to divide the lump and put them. So each year, 100 sons grew in the size of a thumb, and the first child was Duryodhana, the one that started the war. So anyway, Vidura, he advised Dhritarashtra that he should give up, or he should abandon Dhritarashtra. And Bhishma Devi was also there, but Dhritarashtra, he didn't want to give up his son. So Vidura told him, "You're still going to have 99 other sons." And then he said something interesting. He said there would be no sin in abandoning this child, as the scriptures clearly state that an individual can be abandoned for the sake of a family. A family can be abandoned for the sake of a village for the sake of a city, and the world itself can be abandoned for the sake of the soul. So, and it's described that when Dhritarashtra was born, when they opened the bag, they heard jackals, vultures crying, strong wind, so there were bad omens. So then Dhritarashtra inquired, what does this mean? So Vidura told him, it's going to be the cause of the ruins for our family dynasty. That's when he advised him to get rid of Duryodhana, but he didn't want to. So you can see that the bond in family life is very strong. Even when they know it's not proper, they still they ignore good advice. And there's another king, his name is King Anga in the 4th canto. He had well-qualified Brahmins and to perform a sacrifice, so to invite the demigods. But the demigods, they didn't come. So King Anga, he asked his ministers, his priests, why aren't the demigods coming? So the priests, they knew everything. So they said, in your previous life, in this life you're sinless. Not even in thought you thought of something sinful, but in your previous life you were very sinful. Therefore you're not awarded a child in this life. So when I read that, I was thinking, dang, that's why I don't want to have a child, Even if you find the right partner, there might be a chance of you not being able to beget a children. So there's dangers even in marriage life. And so King Anga, he really wanted a child. So the ministers, they said, pray to Lord Vishnu, if you need anything, pray to Lord Vishnu. So as soon as they offered oblations to the fire, a bright, effulgent personality appeared, and he was holding a sweet rice. And so the king, Anga, he gave this milk to his queen. And the queen delivered a child, and this child was King Vena. You guys remember King Vena? King Vena, it was described that when he was young, with his bow and arrow, he would go to the forest, and he would start killing innocent deer. And it says that when he would play with his school friends, he would even kill them. King Vena. So King Vena, it says that he was his grandfather was, I think, death personified. So he took on that characteristic. And so long story short, King Vena, he was ruling the citizens in a very improper way. He told the Brahmins, don't worship the demigods, worship me. So he started thinking he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so the ministers and even his father, King Anga, tried so many ways to reform him. But King Vena, he didn't want to change his ways. So in frustration, King Anga, at the dead of night, he left his wife, he left his family. And so he says something interesting. The king thought to himself, persons who have no sons are certainly fortunate. They must have worshipped the Lord in their previous lives so that they would not have to suffer the unbearable unhappiness caused by a bad son. So a sinful son causes a person's reputation to vanish. His irreligious activities at home cause irreligion and quarrel among everyone, and this creates only endless anxiety. Such a son is nothing but a bond of illusion for the living entity, and he makes one's home miserable. So the king thought, a bad son is better than a good son because a good son creates an attachment for home, whereas a bad son does not. A bad son creates a hellish home for which an intelligent man naturally becomes very easily detached. You know, in the Bhagavatam, it describes that materialistic household life, it's like a silkworm. A silkworm, he creates a cocoon with his saliva. But what happens? He traps himself in this cocoon and he can't get himself out. So similarly, materialistic household life is like that. He becomes too attached to his wife, his children. And I read in a class that the Srimad Bhagavatam, they describe someone who is unfortunate when he only is concerned with 8 things: his wife, children, home, occupation, bank balance, relatives, friends, and his body. In Kali Yuga, this is their goal of life, right? And so I want to add one more, his dog, right? But then who is considered fortunate? One who remembers Krishna is fortunate. One who is chanting the holy names of Krishna is more fortunate. And one who is chanting Krishna's name in the assembly of devotees is considered to be the most fortunate. And so King Anga, he left his household because of his bad son. And so fast forward, the Brahmanas, they tried to talk some sense into King Vena, but King Vena didn't want to. So they killed him by using, it says, high-pitched sounds, mantras. So when they killed King Vena, they needed someone to occupy the throne. And it says that a log, there's fire on each side. And the poor ants, they don't know which side to go. So similarly, if the citizens were ruled by King Vena, they would be in distress. And if there is no king, there would be rogues, thieves, like that, to take over. So King Vena, after he was killed, the sages, they churned the thighs of the dead body, and a person with black complexion like a crow was born. His name was Bahuka. And he was a Nashada, the father of the Naishada race was born. So it's described that these people are sinful, so they take birth in the hills, in the forest, like that. And so when they churned the 2 arms of King Vena, as a result, a male and a female couple came out of his arms. Do you guys remember who they were? King Prithu and his wife, Archie. So Lord Brahma, he saw the lines of Lord Vishnu's palms on King Prithu's right hand and the mark of a lotus flower on the soles of his feet. So he knew he was a partial representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what's interesting is that they started glorifying King Prithu before he even did any activities. So King Prithu told them, you should glorify someone after you've seen their good qualities. You don't glorify them just because. And the demigods, they started presenting King Prithu different gifts. So it's described that Kuvera, he presented King Prithu with the golden throne. The demigod Varuna presented him with an umbrella that constantly sprayed fine particles of water and was as brilliant as the sun. There's a picture of this in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the demigod of air, Vayu, he presented King Prithu with 2 whisk fans, chamaras. And the king of religion, Dharma, presented him with a flower garland which would expand his fame. The king of heaven, Indra, presented him with a valuable helmet. And the superintendent of death, Yamaraj, presented him with a scepter to rule the world. So he was given different gifts from the demigods. And Lord Vishnu himself, he gave his Sudarshan chakra. And the goddess of fortune gave him imperishable opulence, King Prithu. So King Prithu, he said, O gentle reciters, offer such praise in due course of time when the qualities of which you have spoken actually manifest themselves in me. So, and he says that a person who is very famous and powerful does not like to hear himself praised. So as devotees, we should have this mindset to remain humbles. Materialistic people, they love hearing about themselves. They even talk proudly of themselves. And so, you know, King Indra, he made a lot of mistakes. But I was just reading in the Bhagavatam. King Indra, so Durvasa Muni, he was passing on the road and he saw King Indra on his elephant. So Durvasa Muni gave him a garland from his own neck. Indra, he was too proud, so he took the garland and he put it on the trunk of his elephant. And the elephant, being an animal, he didn't know the value of this garland. So the elephant took it, put it under between his legs, and then he smashed it. So Durvasa Muni, he was angry and he cursed Indra to be poverty-stricken. This was during the churning of the milk ocean, you know, the demigods and the asuras. And so to be extremely opulent, material advancement is sometimes very risky. The materially opulent person does not care about anyone, and thus he commits offenses to great personalities, such as devotees and great saints. So too much wealth makes one blind. So King Venu was an example of a bad son. But on the other hand, there are many good sons who have glorified their family by their qualities and examples. Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, the Pandavas. Even Krishna himself appeared as Lord Ramachandra and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to give examples. And what's interesting is that in the Bhagavatam it says that a human being, he may have a maximum duration of life of 100 years. But out of those 100 of ignorance, he sleeps at night. So he only actually has 50 years. And then, so he goes on, that with 10 years, he spends it, you know, playing like that in his childhood. When he's an adult, he spends that in romance. And then when he's in old age, he worries. So a person actually has about 20 years to practice Krishna consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada, he says that remembrance of Krishna is not possible for the impure soul who has not practiced Krishna consciousness in devotional service. Therefore, one should practice Krishna consciousness from the very beginning of life. Prahlad Maharaj, he told his demoniac friends to stop messing around, to take the human form of life very seriously. Because human life is very rare. It actually transmigrates from different species, 8,400,000, and then finally he's awarded a human birth. And although temporary like other bodies, it's rare because we have a chance to perform devotional service to Krishna. And then, so what will we be thinking at the time of death? Are we going to be thinking of making money? Are we going to be thinking of women, a dog? So that determines our next life. And we just read that Bharat Maharaj, we saw his 3 lives. First he was Maharaj Bharat, and then he fell down by thinking of a deer while he was dying. So he had to accept the body of a deer, and then his last birth was Jadabhara. He knew by the grace of Krishna, he remembered his past life, so he took that life very seriously. So we knew he instructed King, what was the king? Rahugana. So there's many instances of good sons and bad sons. And so this Ajamila, he cried out for his son, and so he uttered Narayana, and the Vishnu Dutas immediately saved him. So I want to tell a few pastimes. Do you guys remember someone else that cried out for Krishna and was saved? Draupadi. Yeah. So Krishna, he went to Indraprastha, and he was being served personally by Draupadi. And Draupadi gave him a fruit, and Krishna was paring this fruit with a knife. So he slipped and he nicked his finger, and blood started flowing from his finger. So Draupadi, she immediately tore a piece of her sari and handed it to Krishna to bandage his finger. Krishna smiled and said, "O gentle lady, I will surely repay this gift of your sari." So when the assembly of the Kurus and the Pandavas of the gambling match, Draupadi was dragged to the assembly hall by Dushasana. And Karna even called her a prostitute because she was married to 5 men. And so, anyway, long story short, Dushasana was told by Karna to disrobe her in front of everybody. The elderly members of the family, everyone. So Draupadi, she tried to protect herself, but Dushasana was very strong. So she cried out, "O Govinda, O Keshava." And then she lifted up her hands, and then Krishna supplied her with unlimited saris. And it's described that when Dushasana was pulling, he was perspiring, he actually fell down because he couldn't believe how much cloth there was. And then so this is a example of someone who cried out for Krishna, and there's so many others also. And so, how do we want to leave this world? Nothing to show for, a negative impression, or do we want to leave this world knowing we helped others to remember Krishna? Do we want to be remembered for our good examples to the world, to be remembered by our services to Krishna, Guru, and devotees? And it says that a parent, depending on the cry of the child, they see the urgency of that. Just like, you can hear if a child is faking the cry, right? Wah, wah, wah. But when the child is really crying, like crying, the mom or the dad, they'll run to the child. And they said that was more dangerous if there's no sound. What are they doing? So they check on the child. So similarly, when we chant desperately for Krishna and want to go back to him, then that's considered successful. Okay, I'm going to end there. Any questions, comments, corrections, chastisement?
This may be a weird question, but how do you desperately chant for Krishna?
That's a very good question, thank you. So, we should remember that we have been stuck in this material world for a long time, rotting life after life after life. We're trying to enjoy this material world, but that's not the purpose of this material world. And when you know that the real happiness is only by serving Krishna, then you should have what is it called? Just like a good son, A good son, he wants to render service to his father. And so as part and parcels of Krishna, it is our duty to serve Krishna. But like you were saying, wealth, it creates, wealth makes a man blind sometimes. So when a person is enjoying in this material world, he doesn't see the necessity to cry out for Krishna. So Queen Kunti, she even said, someone with a great birth, someone who's beautiful, someone who's learned, they can't cry out for Krishna because they don't know the urgency of it. So we cry, just knowing our position in this material world, we should know that. Does anyone else want to include addition?
Thank you, Govardhan. That was really well researched. There was a lot of information. Thank you. A lot of nice stories. You really elucidated various points of the Bhagavatam. On Monday, we're going to have the Ishtagoshi. We're going to talk about the Gita Marathon next month. So I was wondering if you could introduce that and maybe talk about the importance of the Gita Marathon and kind of fire us up, and maybe those listening about why that's an important month. And maybe you have some stories from the marathon from previous years.
Okay, thank you. So Maharaj told Vijay Prabhu that we're going to meet on Monday to discuss, what are our plans for December marathon. So we're going to discuss who's going to be going out, what times, what days, what services are going to be covered. But the December marathon is a way to distribute as many books as we can to the public. I remember I was at Balboa Park with Raja Mohan and Bhakti Jamal. And it was blissful. We had 2 tables. It was like non-stop people coming to our table. So it required 3 people, to appropriately attend to these people, But the December marathon is blissful because, a few years ago, or maybe even last year, everyone went out. Mogalila Prabhu, Mukunda Charna Prabhu. I remember meeting them like in Ocean Beach, and Mukunda, he said something, but I'm not going to repeat that in the van. But, Hare Krishna. But yeah, it's a good way to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. We should get fired up, and it's almost the end of the year, So why not give a chance to all the people that we meet to get them a book, to help them who they are, what the purpose of life is, things like that. And so Vijay Prabhu, he's going to recommend us to stay out longer, 7 hours like that. And so he was saying that when he first joined, the brahmacharis, they were going out for like 7, 8 hours. That was the standard, 12 hours. And I remember Damodar Kumar Prabhu, I think he went somewhere and he distributed like 100 Gitas. I think that was his biggest day. Right?
Yeah, Kalpali.
Huh?
Kalpali.
Yeah, Kalpali. So the December marathon is going to be very blissful. I'm looking forward to it. And so the congregational devotees, it's a good time to sponsor books, for the devotees to distribute them. And everyone works together. And it's a better way at celebrating the Christmas holidays instead of just, buying a gift for someone. Why not give gift to everyone? So yeah. Anyone else? Okay. Anyone on Zoom? Jai. Okay. Thank you for your time and attention. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.